I love draft day trades. I really do. And on the CFL, it happens more often than you think, but sometimes it doesn't have that much of an impact as, per se, an NHL draft day or even the Major League Baseball or the NFL draft day. It just hits different because sometimes if it's not a deep draft, if you're a team that just wants to move up, you may throw in a different asset. So it's very rare on a draft day that you actually throw in multiple picks and that's it. Well, that's what happened in 2014. Ottawa's never looked back, and Montreal enjoyed the fruits of their labor by picking the first overall pick in the 2022 CFL draft. Here's how it happened. The 2014 CFL draft, the Ottawa Redblacks said, hey, we like this kid so much that we're wanting to trade up, and we'll give you a second round pick. Montreal, we just kind of want that second round pick back, and if you don't mind. And Montreal said, okay, we don't know what we're doing, so we'll play ball. And the trade was made. The 2014 CFL draft saw the Montreal Alouettes sending a 4th overall pick and a 13th overall pick to the Ottawa Redblacks in exchange for the 10th overall pick and the 5th overall pick in the 2014 CFL draft. Okay, so one side is really crazy. The other side is just quick because it ends with this particular trade. With the Ottawa Redblacks, with the 13th overall pick, they select receiver Scott McDonnell. Now, Scott McDonnell was a reliable special teams guy, went in, played whenever he was called upon, which is rarely, but I wouldn't say that this was a horrible selection. It just probably was maybe a stretch. Hindsight's 2020, but looking back at the stats, a second round pick probably could have been done better. You know, there's Tyler Corpina, J.C. Bullia, and Derek Wigan. The 4th overall pick is the reason why this trade was consummated, and the Ottawa Redblacks selected the cornerstone franchise player at this point who is still on the roster, Antoine Pruneau. It is just multiple-time division, multiple-time CFL All-Star, and helped the Ottawa Redblacks to the Grey Cup in 2015 and 18, and helped them to the Grey Cup title in 2016. Words cannot describe, not enough words can describe Antoine Pruneau and what he means to the Red Black franchise. McDonnell released, Pruneau still on the roster. Ottawa side is done. So why don't we take a sneak peek to what Montreal did? Montreal, with that 5th overall selection, selected offensive lineman David Foucault. Now, I'll try the NFL, and I'll talk about this in a couple of years. 2017 comes around, Foucault gets released by the Carolina Panthers, and Montreal says, hey, you want to play football? Foucault says, sure. Montreal says, you want to play with us? Foucault says, no. And then another trade was made. The Montreal Alouettes traded David Foucault to the BC Lions in exchange for offensive lineman Javon Alafoy and defensive lineman Vincent Brown. Now, Brown didn't play much, if at all, in 2017, partially released shortly after. And Alafoy, really decent for Montreal. Why? Because of Kavis Reed's mismanagement in 2017. He was released shortly before his bonus was due in the 2018 offseason. And so that branch is done. Let's go to the 10th overall selection. And who did Montreal use for that? Andrew Liu. And a lot of you are thinking, who is that? Well, Andrew Liu played a couple of seasons with the Montreal Alouettes as a special teams guy. Not necessarily noticeable, but as is the case with some GMs in the CFL or any professional sports league, when you have one GM who has high value and high praise for one player, no matter what the case is, it generally means that there's multiple GMs that really think highly of said player. So the Montreal Alouettes in 2016 shipped off Andrew Liu to the Saskatchewan Roughriders for the 31st overall pick in 2018 CFL draft. And you're thinking, okay, what did Montreal use with that selection? And the answer is, they didn't. The CFL draft in 2018 had a monumental draft day trade again. And the Montreal Alouettes participated in one that we've already talked about with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. The Montreal Alouettes sent the 31st overall pick with the 1st overall pick, as well as the 44th overall pick And the 10th overall pick in 2019 to the Hamilton Tiger Cats for offensive lineman Ryan Bauman. The second overall pick in 2018, 34th overall pick, the 56th overall pick, and receiver Jamal Robinson. Now this one's going to be kind of quick. Jamal Robinson didn't play for the Montreal Alouettes, was shortly released after training camp, cut on his own fruition, so that branch ends there. The 56th overall pick was used to select Richmond Natea, who didn't really amount to anything, so that branch ends there as well. The 34th overall pick, though, well, that was shipped off to the BC Lions in exchange for the 38th overall pick and the 46th overall pick. The Montreal Alouettes, with that 46th overall pick, selected offensive lineman Paul Kozacek, who wasn't traded, in fact released. That branch ends there. And the 38th overall pick was running back Ryder Stone. Probably the best name for a CFL running back that I could ever think of. Unfortunately, he wasn't traded and he's no longer playing, so that branch ends there. With the second overall pick in 2018, the Montreal Alouettes selected offensive lineman Trey Rutherford, trying to redo what they almost kind of killed in regards to their offensive lineman. They wanted to start over from scratch, and Trey Rutherford was brilliant. The only fact is that he announced his retirement shortly after 2020, after they called out to cancel the season because he wasn't traded. That branch ends there. In comes Ryan Bauman. Ryan Bauman actually began his career, and there is another trade tree that breaks into this one, when Ryan Bauman was traded to the Hamilton Tiger Cats in exchange for the 8th overall pick in the 2015 draft, which they actually used to select Jacob Ruby, who signed with the Ottawa Redblacks this past offseason. But that has nothing to do with it. It's a completely different trade tree, but it brings Ryan Bauman back to Montreal. And Ryan Bauman was good in Montreal, but the reunion in Montreal was short-lived, as Montreal shipped off Ryan Bauman to the Toronto Argonauts in exchange for defensive back TJ Heath and a third-round pick in the 2020 draft. Now, we never really got to see the 2020 draft, so we're going to talk about TJ Heath, who was an all-star. He has 2 years in Winnipeg, or I guess a year and a half in Winnipeg, and half a year times 2 in Toronto. Didn't play that much in the CFL, but he was good enough to warrant being eligible to be voted top DB of the decade of the 2010s. But he didn't play that much, and because of injuries, cut his career short, and he retired after the 2018 season. Not bad trade, it just didn't work out. But here's where it gets really nifty. With that third-round pick in the 2020 draft, the Montreal Alouettes selected offensive lineman Carter O'Donnell. And a lot of you people are probably thinking, hey, I remember that name because I'm an NFL fan. He's currently with the Indianapolis Colts, and you'd be correct. But a lot of people probably could remember that, hey, he was part of a big trade that happened last week as part of another draft day. Well, it was draft week trade, and it was the Montreal Alouettes wanting to trade up in the 2022 draft. They sent the rights to Carter O'Donnell and the 4th overall pick to the Edmonton Elks in exchange for the 1st overall pick in the 2022 draft. And unless you've been hiding under a rock, you know that with that 1st overall pick, the Montreal Alouettes selected 1st overall linebacker Tyrell Richards out of Syracuse. From all accounts, this seems to be the most ready available player in this draft class. Not only that, it is a men amongst boys in this draft class. Not to say all the other players selected are kind of chopped liver. This is a different breed of animal, and I'm looking forward to it. The jury's out to see whether or not Tyrell Richards will be all what everybody claims him to be, but to see that a trade that happened in 2014 lives on in 2022 with the 1st overall pick in the 2022 CFL draft, pretty amazing. Who do you think won this trade? Did Ottawa? They've got a Grey Cup, and they've got a premier athlete at a safety position in Antoine Pruneau. Or did the Montreal Alouettes win this? Yeah, okay, they didn't win that many playoff games, but they actually used those assets to gain more assets, and now they landed the 1st overall pick in the 2022 draft. So an argument can be made that they won this trade. Leave your comments below, and again, if you have any future suggestions for future trade trees, hit them up on my Twitter page @RougeDalts. Podcast can be reached on Twitter @RougeRadio. And of course, this video is powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on Twitter.